Welcome back. Our theme of the day is really the resources that are available here in Ventura County, and but also to me, it's what happens as you're leading an ordinary life and overwhelmed sometimes with bills or too much rain, and then all of a sudden the road opens up in front of you and it's a pit of fire and your life is changed, and the way you come out the other side, oftentimes you're like healed steel there. Now you're tougher, but it's part of it is the journey, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Dr. Lucerna was kind enough to introduce me to Yvette. So
good afternoon.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing now?
Well, I'm a resident of Ventura County, born and raised here, and I'm actually an employee of the county. I work as a social worker.
Well, that's good. So you hear lots of stories, and so before the event in your life, you hear their stories, and it was kind of somebody else's life, and
exactly.
You could have sympathy for it, and did you bring some of that home with you? I know a lot of people, the misery of other people's lives, suddenly your own life is just seems tough.
I've always been really careful to try to leave that at the office as much as possible, but obviously it affects you, and especially in the middle of the night, a story might come to my mind, and I think about it all night about how I'm going to help this child or this family. Absolutely.
Keeping our lives in balance, it's kind of family and spirit and work and play, and sometimes we get too much work going. And so in terms of your life before what happened, you were a social worker and working with families and children, and taking it sometimes, waking you up at night. And so do you remember or kind of what the first symptoms were in terms of?
For my cancer?
Yes.
Well, actually, what happened was I went in for my very first mammogram. I was 41, and I know we're supposed to start at 40, but I went at 41, and I had cancer at my first mammogram. So, yeah, that was kind of a shock. I had a mammogram. A couple weeks later, I got a call or a letter that they needed to redo the mammogram. So I went in a second time, and that's when they said, you need a biopsy. And
let me just stop. What was receiving? This letter thing always drives me crazy. What was it like to get a letter?
Well, it basically said that we couldn't read the mammogram so well, we would like to redo it. So I didn't think too much of it. When I went in for the second mammogram about 2 months later, that's when they called in a doctor. He said, we really think you need a biopsy. And it took 3 months to schedule that for a number of reasons. Which hospital I was supposed to go to, which hospital I could not go to, the doctor's schedule. But what I did was I took those 3 months between the second mammogram and my biopsy to really think, what would I do if I had breast cancer? And I made the decision that if I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I would do a bilateral mastectomy. And I only shared this with one friend. No one else knew this, my plan. And I had my biopsy in July of 2007, and the doctor said, you look fine, I don't think there's any problems, you'll know for sure in a day or two. And the next evening, about 6 p.m. when I was at work, my general physician called me up and said, I hate to tell you this on the phone, but you have breast cancer. And my heart skipped a beat, I think. And she said, but you have the best kind to have, and it's a type of breast cancer called DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. She said, it's the best one to have. So I immediately went on the computer and spent about an hour researching DCIS and found out that it is the best kind to have if you're going to have breast cancer.
Anything, just I'm going to stop time to time, because as a doctor, they didn't schedule you to come in and get face to face, you know, and that's really this, getting a letter, a phone call. I'd like to see, I'm hoping that people understand that's not the way you throw people into a fire.
Yeah, that's what happened. And so within...
You went on the internet.
Right, studied for it took about an hour to study, figure out what was going on before I went to my parents' house and told everyone what was happening. And I learned that the typical course of treatment for that type of breast cancer is a lumpectomy with radiation. But in the back of my mind, I had already decided over the 3 months I would do a bilateral mastectomy. So within a week, I was scheduled to meet my general surgeon, and he went on and on saying, okay, we're going to do lumpectomy, and then we'll do radiation, and as if that was going to be my plan. And I said to him, well, there's another way we could handle this. And when I told him my idea, he basically told me in so many words, that's pretty radical. You don't need to do that. You don't have to make a decision now. You can wait till the day of surgery. And I said, no, this is what I want to do. I want to do a bilateral mastectomy and then reconstruction with implants. And so after I met with him, I met with my oncologist, and then I met with Dr. Lucerna. And so we were all on board that this is how we were going to deal with this, the mastectomy, and hopefully within 3 months have my implants. And so maybe a 3-month ordeal. And that was going into my surgery, that was our plan. It was a 3-month ordeal. Ended up being radically different. You want me to go ahead and?
Yes,
okay.
radically different.
Well, I went in for surgery, and they removed both breasts, and the general surgeon did that. And then Dr. Lucerna put expanders, which are kind of like balloons, that through the course of several months, she would fill them up with fluid to stretch out the skin so that the body could accommodate the implants. So I had surgery on a Tuesday, and that Friday, my surgeon came in to see me, and he said, you know, Yvette, you made the right decision. And I said, well, I know that. I never wavered. I was very confident in my decision. He said, well, you don't understand. You did not have a DCIS, a stage 0 cancer. You actually were at a stage 2, and it was growing fast and aggressively. And I would have had to have had a mastectomy anyway. So I was very happy that I had made that decision. So a couple days later, I went to see Dr. Lucerna so we could see how I was healing. And she said, you know, you might have to do radiation. And that kind of, again, a little bit of a heart skip. The next day, Dr. Lucerna had to call me and tell me that the tumor review board had met and that I was going to have to do chemotherapy. And that made me cry because I knew I had long hair, and the thought of losing my hair was just, it was a very sad day for me. I ended up going home that night and spent 5 hours researching chemotherapy so I could be prepared to meet with my oncologist the following day. And so the following day, my 42nd birthday, was spent picking out what type of chemo I was going to use. And I did a lot of research on that and found a chemo that I felt would be less harmful to my organs, my heart, my kidneys, but also one that I was hoping was going to preserve my hair. And so my oncologist said, well, we don't usually use that type of chemo, but if you'd like to do that, we can do that. It's going to take 6 months instead of, you know, maybe 3 months, 12 treatments instead of maybe 3 treatments, but I was willing to do that. And so we got ready to start the chemo, and unfortunately I developed an infection in my left breast. And so Dr. Lucerna had to do sort of an emergency surgery and take the expanders out. And she was going to replace both of them, and when I woke up a couple hours later, I had one expander in and one out because it was my chest wall was too infected. And that was another devastating moment to wake up and think I'm going to look one way and very different. So I did 6 months of chemotherapy, and my hair did fall out. About 85% of it fell out, and that was the day it fell out. That was one of the worst days of my life. And it fell out every day for 5 weeks, and then finally it stopped.
Yeah, that's such a funny thing. Again, as a physician, we go, all right, here's the chemotherapy, we met as a board, and the most important thing to you was
my hair.
Losing your hair.
It was my hair, yes.
You know, and I mean, we're so out of control,
right.
too. I mean, I'm going to control keeping my hair, and
right.
so I can see where the tears would come.
So I did my 6 months of chemo, and then we needed to start radiation. And Dr. Lucerna was concerned about putting the expander in before radiation. She thought maybe we should go through the radiation, and then we'll see what we can do. We were concerned we might not be able to use implants, though, because the skin does get damaged from the radiation. Well, I met my radiation oncologist, and I told him my story about my plans for reconstruction. And he said, you know what? I feel comfortable radiating you with the expander in. Go put it in. So I contacted Dr. Lucerna. So this is surgery number 3. We put the expander back on my left side, and we started the expansion process, which is very interesting. I would go to her office, and she would have like a syringe, and there's a port, and she would just fill me up. And I think I know what a tire feels like now because I could feel my skin stretching as the expander got bigger and bigger.